Journalism, a program for the people, is a study dedicated to storytelling and pursuing the truth. Welcome to Where You At, a podcast where we take you inside the work of alumni for the School of Journalism and Media Studies at San Diego State University. Our goal, to show you the success of our alumni, inspire students with the stories, and connect students and alumni on the path of journalism and success. Now, here is your host, me, Rami Alarian. Hello, listeners. I am so happy to be here today. As always, we have a very special guest. Rain Garcia started her own company fresh out of college. CEO and founder of Garcia Media Works, a social media management and digital marketing company. Garcia started a pretty local inspiration, and the greatest thing is she was an intern for the JMS program, just like me. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I'm
Is
excited
there
to be
anything I
here.
missed?
No, I think that basically covered all the important stuff.
Anyway, I always just like getting right into things. Feel free to tell me about your time at SDSU.
Well, I was a unique case in the sense that I graduated high school in 2020. And unlike a lot of other colleges, SDSU actually moved anyone who was not local. You had the opportunity to move into the dorms, even though classes were still remote. So I was able to come visit SDSU, live there. I fell in love with it. I toured a couple other colleges, and I just had a moment when I walked onto campus at SDSU when I was in high school, and I was like, this is it. It's SDSU or nothing. So it worked out, thankfully. And then eventually my sophomore year classes started to resume. There was a little 3-week break they took mid-semester where we had to be online again. And from there, I got more in depth into the JMS program, and yeah.
So if there was any campus that you would want to do distance learning at, it would be SDSU.
Yes, I would much rather be there physically, which worked out, but yes, I would even rather distance learn.
Wow. That's wonderful. And I know you talked about this a little bit. You just kind of had a love for it right away. What highlighted SDSU for you? What shined through when you visited the campus, and why did you choose it?
I think one, at the time, I really wanted to be a journalist. So I was originally still going to be in the JMS program. I ended up going down the PR track. But that was one, it was a really compelling program. I looked up best journalism schools in San Diego. I mean, not in San Diego, in California. And obviously SDSU came up. And then I'm from a pretty small town in North San Luis Obispo County. And I had
Okay.
never really left the county. I wanted to live in a city, but not somewhere as intimidating as like LA or New York.
Mm.
And San Diego is that perfect balance where there's neighborhoods that feel like towns and there's the ocean, but it's still a larger city. So it was perfect.
So it was all coming together right away. You saw it as kind of like the Goldilocks of schools.
Yes, it was
Perfect.
just right.
And it was just right. Not too big, not too small, not too far away from the beach. Um, that's perfect. And I mean, what did your experience at SDSU look like? You were in the JMS program. I know that. You were an intern. I know that for sure. What other extracurriculars occupied your time?
Yeah. I didn't join, any Greek life. That wasn't really my journey. But however, I was one of like the founding members of a club. I don't know if it's still around. It was called Color House. So I joined my sophomore year. And then I eventually got on the leadership board, I guess,
Okay.
my junior year and senior year. I started helping with their social media my sophomore year and then became the president, which was super fun. But it was basically a club that was all encompassing for anything creative. So,
Mm.
modeling, social media management, graphic design, photography, fashion, anything that you could think of. And I've always been a really creative person. So, through there, I met a lot of friends, people who had really interesting insight, other people who wanted to go into this path, make music, etc. And then obviously my biggest extracurricular was being a JMS intern.
Sweet. Tell me about that too, because I know you had some pretty good successes. You were operating the TikTok. What did things like that look like?
Well, I always like to say that the intern position was created for me. I don't
Aw.
know how true that is, but I think it's fun to say. Dr. Northup had reached out to me my sophomore year. I was working for a program for PSFA, Professional Studies in Fine Arts College, doing their social media. And so we kind of, for lack of a better word, we were mutuals on TikTok. So he was already posting some stuff. And then he reached out basically saying, I see you're a JMS student. I would love to poach you, let's chat. And I was like, oh, it's actually, a year-long position. I'm open to more experience. And so then my junior year, the JMS interns were created. I was the flagship social media intern, really focusing on TikTok. That was my baby. And I did have a lot of success with it. I found a great balance of strategy and things I had already been doing in other freelancing and really I think, honed the craft on that platform. And I was given a lot of creative freedom while still helping JMS obviously achieve their goals of awareness and applications and event attendance. And so that was an unbelievable opportunity for the content side. And then also everything I got networking wise while being an intern.
Yeah, and I still see some of your whenever I look at the TikTok page, I still see some of your videos up there. I still know what they look like. If anyone were to travel back to the TikTok account, they would be able to see your art firsthand. And so you've certainly made maybe not only the internship, but definitely a lasting impact afterwards.
I'm definitely proud
Um,
of that.
Good, good, and you should be. And that kind of looks like sort of what you're doing now. Did it inspire you in any way to kind of start pursuing what you're pursuing now?
Absolutely. At the time when I was doing the JMS program, like I said, I was originally going to be a journalist, and then I decided pretty early on that I wanted to go into PR. And I was freelancing, I was doing the JMS stuff, but then I was also doing like paid freelance work for a couple different businesses. And my work prior in social media, so stuff I had done for other businesses, the PSFA program, and then the JMS program were that was my portfolio. So I was able to kind of submit it to get different opportunities. But the concept of doing what I'm doing now didn't really occur to me until honestly my capstone. So December of 2023, and I graduated in May of 2024. And I just had a realization I was helping with the social media for part of our capstone. And actually, another intern was like, oh, like, what are you going to do? After you graduate. And I had a moment. I vividly remember we were walking through the student union and I was like, I think I want to try to do this and do my own thing and work in social media. And I had a mentor at the time and I told her that. And she said, oh, thank goodness. I was hoping you were going to get to that conclusion on your own. I didn't want to tell you what to do. So definitely a lot of the same stuff that I was doing for JMS.
You kind of knew that you were going to go down a more independent path, which is pretty interesting, just fresh out of college.
Mhm.
And honestly, really exciting to see because you don't see that often. Was it daunting in any way? Did you know that you didn't want to do, work part of a, entry level job or anything like that? What kind of motivated you? Because I feel like a lot of students, they might stop at just the thought of it.
Yeah. I did post grad, like I said, I was freelancing. So I registered on May 1st before I had even graduated, 2024, my
Mhm.
business as an official LLC. I got the name of the company and I got a position remote working for a PR firm being an intern. And so it was a paid opportunity. It was minimum wage post grad. And so I was freelancing and I was doing this. I was like, maybe I'll do this. I really want to own my own business. It's not making enough revenue to do that. So I'll do a little bit of both. And then a couple months in, I secured one final client that overpassed what I was doing at the PR agency. And so I was able to quit. That being said, it was terrifying. Um, it still is a little daunting sometimes, but I have really good mentors that have helped me through a lot of stuff. I've looked at a lot of resources, books, podcasts, basically helping you handle any imposter syndrome or questions that you might not know. Even these mentors that I work with, they don't own social media agencies, but understanding how to be responsible for a team. I have multiple employees and making sure that I'm being a great leader for them while also growing the business and feeling fulfilled as myself. So very daunting, but taking that leap was the best decision I ever made.
I know we talked about it at the beginning of the podcast, but feel free to intro the business as much as you can on what it looks like, on who it might service, who's the typical client, and kind of what it's all about.
Yeah. So we are a digital marketing and social media agency. And our tagline is we handle your social media so you can focus on growing your business, not creating content. And the thought behind that is basically everyone that we work with wants to be a business owner or a brand or a mogul or a thought leader. They do not want to be, for lack of better words, an influencer. They went into what they went into for that. However, nowadays, social media marketing, you have to do it or you're going to fall behind. So that's sort of where we come in. We bridge that gap between brand, business, etc. And we help market them so that way they don't have to and they can focus on what's helping them produce revenue. And so who we service is pretty range, has a pretty big range, which I'm proud of. And I think that's what makes us so special. So we work with brick and mortar hospitality clients and service providers, as well as, like I said, thought leaders and influencers and content creators and everyone in between. And so we really use an understanding of how the algorithm works and who their target audience is and really in-depth research. So it's not just one formula for all the clients and just hoping that it works. So we do everything: filming, editing, posting, captions, everything that you can think of. And so that way for them, it gets to be really hands off because at the end of the day, most people, like I said, they don't want to do it. Everyone that we talk to is like, I hate social media. I know I have to be on it. We always hear that. I know I have to be on it. And so that's where we come in and we help them do whatever their ROI looks like. So more listens on their podcast or YouTube videos, more clients for them, more customers in the door. And we help them achieve that through the use of social media.
When a client comes to you, what are the first steps without revealing any industry secrets? Oh, yeah, we'll keep that zip tied. But what kind of is the process when a client comes to you? What do you start assessing to make sure that you know they're handled the best way possible?
Yeah. I think this isn't necessarily an industry secret, so I can give it away, but
Oh,
any
phew.
kind of agency, the first process is an in-depth onboarding call or like a questionnaire call. So we have
Mhm.
a super long questionnaire. We send it to them ahead of time. Sometimes they look at it and come prepared, and sometimes they don't. But we have an in-depth call, meeting, Zoom, where we're taking all these notes, basically getting to know every single thing we can about the client. Prior to this call, we've done a bunch of research. So if they're a podcast, for example, we've listened to a majority of the episodes, really understanding what they do and what the point is. And then we hop on the call and we basically ask a bunch of questions. Why do you need us? What is it? This is a huge one for us because we think vanity metrics, are great and when high numbers are great. But if they're not moving the needle and getting the results, we're failing. A client is losing their money. So we always say, what does success with working with us look like? What does that look like for you? So that's a super important one. Who is your target audience? That way we understand who they're trying to reach, what demographic, etc. And then we also ask things like, what what are things that you're not comfortable sharing? If you're a parent, are you okay with your children being in content? Do you want to talk about politics? Do you use profanity? And we really get super dialed into who this client is and who they want to attract because we are the client, basically. We are posting in their voice. We're responding to DMs as them. We're making sure there's no disconnect to where it seems like people are talking to a robot. It's not generic. We really want to know who they are and how they talk. So we have this super in-depth call. It almost feels like a job interview for us to them. And that way we can capture everything about them that we need to.
And over time, as you've led this company. What are some major kind of lessons that you've learned? I feel like, starting a new company, you learn a lot of things along the way. Is there anything you knew right away? Is there anything that you had to kind of pick up along the way?
Like I said, I have listened to like a lot of resources, so things
Hmm.
like that have been helpful. But I always like to say that there's no failures in my business, there are lessons. So a great example that's important if you freelance, our contracts now have a cancellation clause. So we either need, rarely has this ever happened, but it's a good safeguard where either you need to give us 30 days notice if you would like to break your contract, or you have to pay a buyout fee. And the reason that
Hmm.
we do that is because we're accounting for a certain amount of revenue. We have software subscriptions. I want to pay my team. Obviously, they're getting paid regardless, but making sure that what we're accounting for is going to be accurate. So that way, a client that's super high paying and fantastic can't just say the next day, I'm done. You don't get any more of the money. I'm done. So things like that are super helpful. Definitely like a lot of contractual agreements, dealing with clients, even in that onboarding questionnaire. If I realize later down the line, oh, I should have asked them this. Okay, now I have to reach out in an email. Really having all of that down to a science now and knowing how to get exactly what I need from them. So that way it's super hands off for them. I'm super informed and it's a very symbiotic relationship for the both of us.
And luckily nowadays it seems like you have a really good team behind you as well. So things have expanded outwards since when you first started, and that's always exciting to see. Tell me about kind of these other positions and why you may have needed some more support behind you.
Yeah. I made a TikTok on my personal account and I just said, if you love social media, I'm hiring. I was hiring for an unpaid or unpaid interns and wanted some people to join the team just to do little things. I was basically getting to a point where such a privilege and I'm so grateful and it worked out so well that the business was growing super fast, but
Hmm.
it was a little bit too much for me. I needed some things off my plate, whether that was just editing a couple reels so that way I could do other things, etc. And so I hired some unpaid interns and from there it turned into a commission-based position where if they helped me find new clients and the clients signed, they got a commission. And then as we grew, it turned into a paid position. So we have, paid employees and they are fantastic and the business would not be what it is without them. And it's so amazing because I mean, first, algorithms are an echo chamber, right? So what I'm seeing on my algorithm and my feed can be completely different. And so we're having these amazing discussions about trends that we're seeing, or if I'm seeing something that they didn't, or vice versa, we're able to really brainstorm and be collaborative, but also look at things from different angles. So, like, obviously, I have a lot more experience. So, getting to show them, hey, when we make a hook for a reel, it's really important that we start with this and end with this. And here's why. And watching them learn and grow is really rewarding for me, but it's also super helpful and fantastic. Like they'll travel for me on behalf of clients, which is a huge benefit of the agency. Like getting to go on work trips is super exciting. So having people that I trust to represent the brand and the business, because at the end of the day, it is named after me, it reflects me. So having people that I trust to go do that and maintain the professionalism and all of that is a huge blessing because it could go poorly and it does not because they're great.
That's good to hear. And you're not just your clients are not just here based in San Diego, is what I'm hearing. You have clients just about everywhere. Does that cause complications at all? How do you deal with kind of these more remote folks?
Mhm. Well, one of our full-time team members, she's actually based in Boston. So that's something that
Oh,
we kind of
wonderful.
work on together with that time difference. So
Hmm.
I wake up earlier now than I used to. And we'll work together and accommodate her schedule and all of those things. And then for clients, something else that I learned was giving them a required time to tell us that we have to travel. So I had been in situations where you know, a team member was here and I was in New York and a client needed us in wherever. And so then it was like, well, we can't, so figuring that out. But other than that, it's been extremely rewarding and exciting to have clients everywhere. I've gotten to travel. I've gotten to go to Mexico. I just got back last week from some work stuff. I got to go to China and Japan and these places I would have never thought I would have got to go to, let alone being paid to be there and everything being covered and accommodated for. So it's more exciting than anything, even just seeing like US cities that I have never seen or airports that I've never been into. It's exciting.
Well, that's wonderful. And in terms of social media marketing, I feel like there's so much that people don't know. Are there any primary platforms that you guys are operating on? Is it different for each client? Or are there different ways to kind of market each client? Are more focused on reels, more focused on trends? What does it kind of look like?
Yeah. Each client, like I said, is definitely not a one size fits all. Some of them are a little easier to do consistently. So, hospitality clients all operate mostly on the same platforms. Thought leaders were also doing LinkedIn. Other clients, service providers, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, podcasts. Obviously, they really need to be on YouTube Shorts. That's something I'm very passionate about right now because you're able to link it back to podcast episodes and it's just very easy to get views on that platform. If you get reels on if you get views on a short, it's a lot easier to get views on a full episode because of the way the platform operates. So each client is different and we put different emphases on different platforms. So, if TikTok is their golden goose, we're going to be pushing as many things per week as we can. And Instagram's more maybe to maintain community. So it depends per client and their goals and then also what we see. So, for new clients, we always say, well, the first month is onboarding. So it's all of our research, filming all of our content. Nothing gets posted in that first month. All agencies kind of operate like that, or at least the good ones do. And then month 2 and 3, we're very upfront that this is seeing what works. So we're going to hit every platform hard. We're going to try every different style. If we use trends, will that work? Some clients will not use trends. That's a decision that we make to make sure we're consistent with their branding. And, if they're a high level executive, we're not going to have them do a dance. And just kind of seeing what works. And then from there, we get our stride and know what works. And we keep using that to get our goals.
And I guess that kind of makes me wonder, what does success look like in this industry? And what does success look like in social media management?
Yeah, I think per client, it's different. So we get that in that onboarding call.
Hmm.
For restaurants and bars, it is paying customers through the door, spending money. If I always use this example, if you're a San Diego bar and your post goes viral in Brooklyn, people will not travel across the country to come get a cocktail. You
Hmm.
want to be very strategic, and we have a great way of doing that, of hitting our target audience. And
Hmm.
so that's, the success. If you're a service provider, it's bookings. If you're a coach, it's new coaching clients. If you're a podcast, sometimes the goals are just viewership and listenership. Sometimes it's getting sponsorships and brand deals. We get really specific with our clients because some agencies will just view success as, we got a high number. And a lot of times, too, some business owners don't know what success looks like, right? So they could be super excited that their social media manager got them 10K views. But if they don't realize what their return on investment is, at the end of the day, they're kind of losing money, right? So we're also super upfront with our clients about that. So we don't want them just funneling money to get numbers unless that's their goal. Like if they want to seem like they have a certain amount of status and they want high views, fantastic. But we're super upfront about making sure our clients get their money back tenfold in what they're doing and seeing that.
Well, that's an interesting point. Is that common practice for a lot of digital media management companies, or is this kind of unique to Garcia Works, in that you don't just look at the numbers, you're taking it a step further and going, well, is this actually profitable?
I think it can go either way. I have seen and known people who do social media who are not very upfront about it. They get their money and they get clients high views and the
Yeah.
branding's nice, which is great. But I've never been someone to kind of put up a front. And I really pride myself as a business owner and as an agency on being very, I think of the word, on being very open. And I have, my integrity is something really important to me. So at the end of the month, clients get a analytics report. So it's all of the metrics. And like I said, they don't always know. So we break down, this is what this metric means. Here's what we want. If you're a bar or a restaurant, you want to see that your post is being shared and saved. It's people keeping you on file to refer to later to go. And so we explain that to them. And then we say, this month on Instagram, we got 12% less views than last month. However, on TikTok, we're here. And then we provide a solution. So we say, okay, maybe on Instagram this month we were down. This is what we're going to do to try to fix that for the next month. And making sure our clients are as involved in the process as they want to be. And that way they know that we're being proactive. And, like I said, the agency is tied to me and I want our clients to have success. And if they're not getting that, I'm going to adapt. I'm not just going to be comfortable coasting.
I mean, fantastic. You're priding yourself on kind of dotting your I's and crossing your T's, and that's good. I've talked to other CEOs in the past, and it always kind of brings up similar questions of, how much outreach is this CEO job? And you're a business that is fresh and new, and that's exciting. And I can almost assume you're looking for more clients and at least making some really good effort to do outreach. What does that look like for Garcia Works?
So we have clients from different places, right? So like I said, I was in PR, so I love and know how to do a cold pitch, a cold email,
Fantastic.
knowing what works and how to get people to open it. And then a lot of our clients have actually come from referrals and word of mouth, which is the most powerful way to get clients because it's someone that the person being referred to trusts
Mhm.
testifying on our behalf, right? So we don't have to do as much outreach because our work speaks for itself. And then with that, sometimes clients will reach out to us. So they'll see, oh, I was doing some research on social media trying to find a San Diego social media manager, an agency. You came up, we have a contact form on our website. Let's set up an introduction call and see if we're a fit. So there's usually 3 different avenues that it comes for. However, it's definitely a lot of cold pitching. And what other founders will tell you and people who cold pitch, a lot of times you don't get responses, which is fine. It's a really time consuming task. And in my pitches too, I want to be very specific. I'll make sure I've gone to this business before and I'll say, oh, I went in and I loved how the lighting, specific example, in the bathroom is like this and this. So that way they know that you really know what the business is. Or another example, I pitched someone recently that I'm in talks with and I was like, hi, here's da da da. I noticed on your Instagram currently that you have a broken link. It doesn't go to anywhere. It's a 404 page. And that got a response because they're seeing, oh, there's something wrong that I didn't know about, and this person found me a solution. So being really specific in your cold pitches helps a lot in showing that you did your research and you're not just, hi, I own a social media agency and I would like to help. Bye. Because that's not making that connection.
Yeah, no, very good that you're kind of bridging the gap. That's kind of again another dotting the i's and crossing your t's type of thing where you're not taking shortcuts.
Mhm.
Is that important when you're just kind of starting out as a business and first thriving in a local area?
Yeah. And something else that we do or that I do is a lot of networking and networking without wanting anything in return. So there's been relationships that I've been fostering where I met at an event and, we keep up on social media or I give them my business card if they ask for it, right? Or I just talk about what I do and I talk about what they do. And then a year down the line, they need someone and they go, oh, I remember Rain. I'm going to reach out, right? And so that's something that's very strategic that we do. And so it's very labor intensive, but it works out and you build amazing connections and relationships. So I've gotten clients that way as well. So we're very specific in those ways, I guess.
In terms of journalism, a lot of folks on this podcast kind of have the same thing, where the same sort of advice where it's please, please, please kind of network with folks. Don't want anything in return. Just introduce yourself, just talk to the person. Um, Especially important for students and clearly very important for a business just starting out.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, expanding a little bit outwards, not to talk about any major clients that you work with,
Yeah.
or feel free
Um,
to intro some of maybe your favorites or your firsts.
well, I don't have favorites. I would never
Good,
have
good.
favorites.
They're all your babies, of course.
Yes. Something else that we do in our onboarding call is we ask if they're comfortable with us sharing that they're clients. Some
Oh,
people
okay.
don't want people to know that they have a social media manager. They would like to seem like they do it all, which is great. We'll sign non-disclosure agreements, etc. Some of them are like, absolutely, shout us from the rooftops, use our website, put, anything like that. I don't have any favorites. One of my longest standing clients is Gilly's House of Cocktails. They're a bar in North Park. I actually got that connection because of something with JMS, so I can explain that in a second. But they opened, or they were a bar that was already existing. They were repurchased and completely redone in November of 2023. They brought me on before the doors even opened. And seeing the growth there has been super cool because it's not a client that kind of was posting or had another social media manager that they did not like. This is ground zero, working our way up and seeing a direct result even before the business of what I was able to create in a year and a half, and then what the team's able to create. And they're also super fun. So they're a dive bar. We can make silly jokes and TikToks about, playing free pool and the bathrooms having fun graffiti on them. And so that's fun and a great way to be creative. And with that, so how I said made that connection. When I was a social media intern, I worked JMS Next in 2023. And for people who are listening that don't know, it's an alumni fundraiser, but also an event for people that are graduating. They get an award for the graduating class. And so I was in charge of handing out name tags. And one of the people who was attending, I gave him his name tag. And then we just kind of ended up, chatting, networking, for lack of a better word. And then we just kept in conversation. And he messaged me and said, "Hi, like, I'm opening this bar. Do you know anyone in the JMS program who does PR and social media?" And like I said, I was networking without wanting anything in return. So he had no idea that that was what I was doing. And I was like, "Oh, me. Here's my portfolio. Here's my, resume with JMS." And that client has been super amazing, helped me get connections. I get to travel with them. And so I always say, like you said, my network is the most powerful thing that I have and one of the best things that I got out of college. So as every other CEO has said, it's so cheesy, but network. Go to the events that you don't want to go to or that feel a little daunting because you might not know anyone. It could change your life, and it changed my life completely. So that's definitely a favorite client and a good story and a good JMS plug.
And I mean, speaking of events, they have some pretty cool ones too.
Yes, they
I
do.
know that they're a pretty cool joint, and I've been there before, and it's exciting that you work with them. Um, and moving right along, I know you were talking earlier about you face a lot of no's or a lot of rejection. That's certainly hard, especially for students applying to things for the first times. Especially when it comes to even applying for jobs in such a, cutthroat journalism landscape. Um, what is your advice with handling a no?
This is such a Gen Z answer, but there's a meme where
Please.
this guy is pickaxing and it's just him pickaxing and there's nothing. And then you see him turn around and right at the end there were diamonds. It's, yeah, rejection isn't fun. Nobody likes rejection. You learn to take it on the chin as you go, but rejection is just redirection. There's a better opportunity that was a better fit for you. There was a reason they did not pick you that would have saved you down the line, right? So you're able to stay true to yourself or more authentic or whatever. And when you are applying for these things, like I said, make a connection. Really do your research on why you want to work somewhere, why you would be a fit. There's the power of the informational interview. Reach out to someone on Instagram or LinkedIn and say, I know you're super busy. I would love 30 minutes of your time on Zoom, or I would love to take you to coffee in between meetings. Be very aware that you know that they're busy and that they don't owe you anything, but just ask them questions. Say, I want to get into this space. How did you do it? Or do you have any advice? What does day to day look like? Anything like that without asking for a job. That's actually how I ended up working at that PR agency. I did an informational interview during my capstone, and months later when I had graduated, the woman said, "Oh, I've been keeping up with your LinkedIn. I saw you graduated. I would love to offer you a job. We're not hiring. I have a position that I want for you." So doing that, and then also having a portfolio. So a resume is great. Everyone loves a resume, blah, blah, blah. But a portfolio is tangible proof of experience. So if you do work in social, have analytics of posts that you've created and say, here's what I did, here's why it worked. Have articles that you've written or press releases. Even if you're not doing it for work or being paid, create a graphic design PR launch campaign on Canva for a brand that you would love to work with, and have that, as an example, and prove that you can do it, not that you just have experience on paper.
You're giving us a look into social media management and marketing companies, but also how to market ourselves, which is great. And and as we kind of wrap up, I just have a couple last few questions. Um, are there any major moments or major projects that we haven't touched on just yet? Anything that kind of led to where you are now that you would want to highlight?
I think we kind of already talked about it, but the thing that makes me the most excited, honestly, is the travel. It's,
Really?
yeah, I mean, who would have thought, right? And so I think that's super exciting. And I never would have thought it would have gotten to, getting a Chinese visa and all of these things to get to do. And so that is super exciting. So that's what makes me so excited, knowing that we have trips coming up and all of those things, but also rewarding my team with that and saying, I would love to have you go on this trip to Cabo for free and do your job there, have so much fun. And that, and then I'm just looking forward to expanding the team. I want to be a big agency. I want to have amazing people on the team with large scale clients, and we're getting there. And I'm with what I've achieved in less than 2 years since graduating, I can't imagine what it's going to look like in 10. And I'm so excited. So definitely that.
I'm glad to hear that we're looking for a pretty bright Garcia Works future. Um, Yeah, yeah. And I guess, I always ask this question, and you kind of already gave some great advice, but what is one piece of advice that, someone has told you along your journey, or something that you've overheard along your career journey, that has helped you?
I think obviously the answer of networking, building those relationships, not being scared to reach out and face rejection or a bunch of unopened emails, because you never know what's going to come from something, right? So handing out name tags at JMS Next completely changed my life and my career. And that I also said, rejection is redirection, right? So as cheesy as it sounds and feels and discouraging as it can be, if you're graduating and you're not getting something in your industry that you want right away, it can feel so discouraging and like maybe something wasn't worth it. But if you just keep pushing, you will get there. This is so corny, but I'm watching Love Story right now on Hulu. And the actor who's playing JFK Jr. did an interview, and he said he's been auditioning for 10 years. And this was the first role that he finally got. And he was about to give up. And he's so grateful that he didn't, because this is going to change his whole life. So, hopefully it doesn't take 10 years, but keep going and you'll find the right thing. And if you're not in the right rooms. So move around, try different things, meet different people, and you'll get where you want to be or where you're supposed to be.
Very well said. Very well said. And last question, is there anybody from SDSU that was in the JMS program that has since graduated that you think I should talk to?
All I can think of is I made so many amazing friends while I was in the JMS program, and they're all doing super different things, right? So my friend Olivia Teslar, she works for the LA County Registrar's Office doing stuff with the election. And then I have another friend who's at a PR agency that she moved to Milwaukee. She moved across the country for this job. I have another friend and he does PR for Feeding San Diego, a nonprofit. So everyone that leaves the JMS program has so many different cool, unique jobs. It's not just one facet that we all did. So I think looking into some of those people and the different avenues, Samaya, she does sports journalism. She just posted a reel earlier at a basketball game. So I think those kinds of things, those people are very cool.
It's always exciting interviewing so many people from all walks of the journalism sphere, on what they love doing and what kind of content they're putting out, and certainly all of it is great. Thank you again for joining us on this podcast. I appreciate you coming in. And well, thank you for teaching us a little bit about this extremely ever expanding market of social media management. I feel like I'm that much more of an expert.
Yeah, of course. And if anyone is listening and wants to do an informational interview, you can send us a DM at Garcia Media Works on Instagram, and I will make sure to open it and get back to you. So thank you for having me on. It was really fun.
Thanks for listening to the Where Ya At podcast. This is Devin Watley from the class of 2021. Thanks to Martine Marine for creating the music you're hearing right now, and Alex Piscatelli for her work on the podcast name and artwork on social media. And a reminder to SDSU alums, we really want to know where you're at. Tell us about your career. Get involved in the school. There's many ways you can do this, from donating your time or money, mentoring students, to even speaking in classrooms in person or on Zoom. Your work can help us grow the program and create more opportunities for our students to succeed. Again, thanks for listening. Subscribe to this podcast. Tell your friends. Recommend us a future guest. And go Aztecs.